Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. This is the Forum, New City Players. I know some of you know about the Forum. Some of you might not know about the Forum. So the Forum is a event that we've been holding in our company for quite a long time. By the way, my name is Ernesto Gonzalez. I'm the Community Engagement Manager and Sound Designer of New City Players. And so the Forum is an event that we use to get our community together to have a discussion with our community regarding a theme or a topic of importance that comes up in the preceding play that we do. So our upcoming play is Water by the Spoonful by Kiara Maria Hughes. And there's a lot of emphasis on addiction and recovery in that show. So we wanted to really bring our community together, be able to discuss this type of thing together, know the perceptions, know the stigmas, and get the right knowledge, right? So that's what we do here at New City Players. We create community through transformative theaters in our event, right? So I appreciate all of you being here tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our moderator of the night, Gio Volpe, who will be asking our panelists the questions, and he'll go ahead and introduce everybody.
Thank you so much, Ernesto. Hi, everyone. My name is Gio, as he said. I'm so happy to be here mediating this discussion. And before we go ahead and start, I would love to have us all just introduce one another and give a title as to your background and what your approach is.
Hi, my name is Jessica Metzel, and I work in the marketing department at FHE Health, where we offer wraparound behavioral health services to people in need.
Hi, my name is Macey Markowitz. I'm the Director of Women's Philanthropy for United Way of Broward County, and we are one of the largest social services organizations in the world.
Hi, I'm Emy Martinez. I am the manager for the Spot out of Care Resource, and that's the Syringe exchange program for Broward County.
Hi there. My name is Luis Garcia. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic and the founder of USA Opioid Crisis Mortality Reduction.
Oh, I got my own. Yes. I'm Dr. Bo Nelson, and I'm the Chief Clinical Officer at FHE Health. We're a national provider for behavioral health services. I'm a doctor of behavioral health, and I've been working in the addiction and mental health field for 24 years.
That's excellent. Awesome. So just to get us started out on the same foot, for the sake of clarity and getting everyone on the same page, I'd love to hear your guys' take on what is addiction. How do we define addiction? I'll leave the floor to you guys.
Well, technically, addiction is engaging in something that becomes compulsive, where you can't, even though you have consequences, you continue to do it. And so again, it's really important. A lot of folks, think alcohol or drugs, but we got to also think about process addictions. Internet, gambling, porn, food. There's all kinds of different processes.
Definitely. Does anyone else want to speak on that topic?
Sure. Addiction is a disease for which there is no known cure, but however it can be assisted in recovery is then possible through Narcotics Anonymous and other fellowships.
We don't really like the word addiction. We like substance use disorder because nobody really chooses to, become, addicted to anything. It's a disorder that develops with time of use, first time or fifth time, right? So that's what it is. It's a substance use disorder. So it's something, like she says, that's not treatable, but it's something that does trigger in the brain where the person can't stop.
And remembering too that there's a genetic component to this. It's really important. We talk about stigma, and we talk about people don't choose this. This isn't just because they're weak or they're not smart or something like that. We don't want to put the person down. There's actually a lot going on, and really once you start to get into that cycle, there's a physiological and a psychological. It changes the way your brain works. It basically hijacks your brain. And so that's really an important concept when we're talking to people or thinking about situations, that it can happen to anybody. But there are people who are predisposed, and we got to be really mindful of that. But at the same time, too, that we got to remember that compassion is the key. And so in addiction or substance use disorders or mental health disorders, we really got to be mindful that the person is struggling, not to take it out on them.
I'll add one more thing. I believe that substance use disorder, aka addiction, is the most misunderstood disease of this generation, especially by those of us who are not directly impacted, have not been impacted. Stigma remains the greatest challenge.
Thank you all for that. That's a great insight. And thank you again for that term, substance use disorder. There we go. That's awesome. So this question is for you, Dr. Nelson. So given your background in neuroscience and cognitive behavioral therapy, can someone ever really truly be cured from this disorder, given that background?
Well, the idea with substance use disorders really is that this is a chronic managed health condition. So the idea is that you don't, a lot of people have this idea, oh, somebody went to rehab for 30 days. Okay, you don't need to worry about it. I was speaking with a clinician today, and she was sharing a story of a patient that she had at her treatment center, and the son had been in treatment for 30 days, and so his parents, in order to help him celebrate getting out of treatment, got him a hotel room, a hooker, and weed. And I say that story because that's really how disconnected a lot of times we can be with understanding what's going on. And so it's frustrating from a provider standpoint is being able to really educate people. The idea of relapse is important because, again, this is a process. It's not an event. And most people don't recognize that actually the relapse rate with substance use disorders is about 40 to 60%. That's exactly the same as it is for diabetes, hypertension, or asthma, other chronic health conditions. It's very interesting to note that we are human beings first, and the idea of being able to deal with that means it's something that you manage. Usually people have a precipitating event, and they're really good. Anybody here, gone and had their blood pressure was up at their doctor, or your cholesterol was high, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna eat salads, and I'm gonna be really good and real mindful, and that lasts for a couple of weeks, and then you get to the point, and you're like, you just fall back into the old ways. And of course, with substance use disorders, the big problem is that you really don't have a chance. That it's a gradually then suddenly kind of problem. And so the fact is most people don't recognize it until there really is a crisis. And that's especially hard on families, that's very hard on kids and all the dynamics around someone who's going through a substance use disorder. But the idea is that this is something that you manage. And if you do it, and people succeed at this every day, even though we don't always hear some of those stories, is that the idea with it is that it actually makes you into a person who you want to be. There's a personal growth that comes through the process of recovery that most people really don't have to face. And those who are in long-term sobriety really have a gift to give to people. And when you hear their story or you see where they've come from, it's really a wonderful aspect of really understanding that this is not a death sentence. You can do something about it.
That's excellent. And that's enlightening to hear that it's an ongoing process that requires management. So moving on, Jessica, this question's for you. So being in the marketing department for the FHE, is it fair to say that you pay attention to the audience that you're marketing towards? You know them fairly well. Definitely. Awesome. So I'm curious to know, we all are curious to know, what do you feel are some of the underlying causes for stigmas around, substance use disorders and such?
So I believe the main underlying factor is lack of education, and people have been misinformed. And it's not, it's not their fault per se, but I love that we have Dr. Nelson here to deliver it in that context. Me personally, in my recovery, I was always perceived as having a moral dilemma, that I was morally flawed, and that wasn't the case at all. My underlying morals were always consistent, but this disease caused me to participate in certain things and take actions that didn't align with those values. But through treatment and living a lifestyle of recovery, I was able to align myself with those values and live a healthy, productive life.
That's amazing.
Good job, Jessica.
That deserves a round of applause, 100%. 100%. And it just, hearing everything that's said so far is just, it's so wonderful to see that mental constitution that it takes to do this, to get through it. And just to follow up, how has dealing with the stigmas affected you personally through your recovery?
So it affects your self-esteem. It affects job opportunities. It affects the more transparent you are, right? And you try to be transparent because you want to help someone else. It can turn around to bite you. I have to prove myself more than most people in a lot of areas of my life because I'm viewed on paper as a drug addict, a criminal, things that I would never use to identify myself. And that's okay because through education, I believe that I've had amazing opportunities and I will continue to persevere.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Give it up for Jessica. That's fantastic. Louise, I have a question for you. So first of all, we'd like to thank you personally for your service and your bravery as being a retired firefighter, and that's just fantastic on its own. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of round of applauses tonight. An inspiring group. So for those who don't know, what is Narcan, just in general?
Okay. I will actually be doing a 30-minute Narcan class back there toward the end for those of you who would like to stay and receive a Narcan spray. So I'll just give you a very quick in a nutshell. Narcan is a pocket defibrillator. It will bring back the dead. In its simplest terms, that's really what I want you to leave with here with. Quick show of hands. How many of you right now have Narcan right here with you inside in your pocket, your purse? Raise your hand if you have a Narcan spray or two right now in your hands, in your pocket. No, it doesn't help you if it's in the car right now with you in here. So there's 2 or 3 of us. Maybe most of us don't have it, so I'm really glad you're here to receive Narcan. Maybe we leave it in our car because it's in a big, bulky box, and that's where people leave it. I carry my Narcan with me everywhere. Narcan is naloxone hydrochloride. You have the life-saving ability that fire rescue in the ER has. And I will cover in my class what most people don't realize about Narcan is you have a much greater chance of saving their life with the spray you get at CVS or Walgreens or you get donated, because it's a high dosage of Narcan. It's specifically designed for fentanyl, carfentanil, aquafentanil, C-nofentanil, fentanyl derivatives, opioid analogs. So it will bring back the dead. Thank you.
Wow, excellent. That's a really, all-encompassing definition. And so in distributing Narcan with your nonprofit, what would you say is some of the biggest obstacles in terms of distributing to people?
We are preaching to the choir here. You guys obviously care. You've been impacted. I see the greatest challenge as apathy, along with what the lady said, ignorance, misinformation. The vast majority of the information on social media is horrible, and it's all stigmatic thinking. And guess what? It's not just the lay public. I'll share a little deep, dark secret. I'm 28 years in fire rescue. I worked around cops, firemen. I moonlighted at the Broward and Palm Beach jails. The stigmatic thinking is far worse among police, fire, corrections, EMS, and ER personnel. And I thought before I went on distributing Narcan 4.5 years ago, it was just a South Florida thing. But I've been to Southern California, Montana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and most of the state of Florida. It is not just a South Florida thing. So therein lies the greatest challenge.
Wow.
Stigmatic thinking.
And that's what we're here to dismantle, hopefully, in just talking about it.
And it's important to note that Broward County has the most opioid deaths of the entire state. And so it's Broward County, about 640, Palm Beach County, about 630 people. Miami, how big Miami has, is about 360 people from this. But we also have to remember, too, that there are thousands and thousands of others who suffer, not necessarily with an overdose, but the fact of the matter is they're one step away. And just like Luis is saying, being close to that support. Once someone goes into respiratory arrest and they're unconscious, most of the time it's because we don't have an intervention at that time. And it happens in people's living rooms, it happens in people's cars, it happens in the bathroom at work. It doesn't just happen at a nightclub or in a hospital.
Wow. Of course, yes.
So I have friends here. With the overdose deaths this past weekend, there was no overdose calls to the ER in Broward County. We spent the last 2 weekends saturating, right? The beaches, the bars, the restaurants, in response to the overdose of the 6 cadets in the house that they rented. So I'm happy to say that we did a pretty good job in Broward saturating as much as we could. And over the weekend, there was no reported overdoses to the emergency room.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. And go ahead and keep the microphone because this question's for you. So Emy, I'd love to know, give us a brief history of how you came to work with Spot.
It's many years, so many years. I've been doing harm reduction since 1992. Wow. Started with the HIV work, and like she said, it's the stigma, right? When she was talking about the stigma, all I could think about was all my friends back in the 80s and the 90s that were dying with HIV and nobody wanted to talk about it, right? So we're at this epidemic now, and it's the same thing playing itself out, right? In the 90s, 1994, I remember we used to take bleach kits and put them in condom bags under the condoms, and we would carry 2 bags, and we would go into the neighborhoods, and we knew what bag we had the bleach kits in, because if the police stopped us, we knew what condom bag to give them, because if they found bleach kits on us, we would get arrested for paraphernalia. So I've been around the block a few times. What brought me to the spot, I was one of the founders for the Syringe Exchange in Miami, and the first Syringe Exchange in the state of Florida, which is why Dade County has such a low rate of overdose deaths, is because of the massive amounts of Narcan that they give out over there in Miami. And then they told me that they were starting something in Broward, and I live in Broward now, so I wanted to come and help my community. So here I am.
Well, no one better to do it than you. That is amazing. So I'd love to know as well, just to give us some more context on what you do, if you could walk us through your role as the manager of the Safe Syringe Exchange.
It's a lot of meetings, a lot of meetings. So what we do is we go out 5 days a week. We go out to Pompano, we go Hollywood, we do Fort Lauderdale. It's a team of 2. So we do at least, we do 8 sites a week. So we go out into the communities, we go out by where the encampments are, and we park my big blue bus out in the middle of the street, because I'm Emy and I'm gonna park here. So it's complete. The Syringe Exchange by law is completely anonymous. So we take no one's name. We create a unique identifier for them, which is the first letter of their first and last name, the first letter of their mother's first and last name, the month they were born, the year they were born, their gender, and their race as they identify. And we give them a card that makes them a member, card-holding member of the Syringe Exchange. I have a card in my pocket. I'm a member because I always have needles. So this is the one card that allows you to carry needles in the state of Florida, right? No matter what Syringe Exchange program you get it from. In the state of Florida, syringes are considered paraphernalia. So depending on the police officer that stops a person who's using an active injector, they will charge them up, that I've been told firsthand, up to 5 charges per needle. So they'll charge them for the 2 caps, the needle, the plunger, and the shaft of the needle. And if you have 10 needles, that's 50 charges of paraphernalia, depending on the police officer you come across. Wow. So this allows them to go, I'm a member. You can't do anything to me. And if they get arrested, the judge, we tell them, tell the judge. And the judge, dismisses the charges. Wow. We let them know that it will cover a new needle in their possession, a used needle in their possession, because the intent is to bring the needle back to us, right, to get a fresh needle, since it's an exchange. And we also let them know that if you have a load in the needle, you're out of luck, that's on you. We do carry needles for everyone in the community. We have participants that take medical, that inject medically, whether it's testosterone, hormone therapy, steroids. We have needles for everyone, for absolutely everyone. We have folks that are uninsured, that are diabetic, that don't have access to needles. We'll enroll them in the program. What do you inject? Insulin. So it's open to absolutely everyone who needs the service. They come in, they drop their needles at the entrance of the van. We ask them a series of questions. We test everyone for hepatitis C and HIV anonymously. And then we give them everything they need. We give them the needles, we give them cookers, we give them cottons, we give them sterile water, we give them tourniquets, we give them sharps containers, and we give them the cottons that they need to use as filters. So absolutely everything that they need to stay safe is what we give them, because it's not just a spread. We're not just trying to control the spread of HIV and hepatitis C and stop it, hopefully, right? Is we're trying to keep them from getting any other infections. I've seen people draw needles from the puddles, draw water out of puddles, right? That's bacteria, which you end up getting endocarditis, which is a heart valve disease. You end up getting so many other things, right? So in doing that, we're cutting down on all these infections. And in doing that, we're cutting down on hospital visits. We're cutting down on treatment for HIV. We're cutting, something that costs 12 cents, can help save $450,000 in a person's lifetime, right? So that's what the Syringe Exchange program does. We're just there to save one person at a time.
That is amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Matt, Emy brought up a really good point. Many of us may not be aware, if you're involved in harm reduction, fentanyl test strips are considered contraband. The police can pull you over, and if they really want to be obnoxious, they can make it a criminal issue. Going a step further, there are even isolated stories of Narcan being their justification for giving you a hard time. Somebody I gave a Narcan to in Palm Beach, near the port of Palm Beach within the past year, was a construction worker, and he was dropping off another construction worker in a low-income, high-crime type area, and the police pulled him over coming out. Bottom line is they found a Narcan box that I'd given him, and they used that as their pretense for bringing out the dogs and wasting 2.5 hours of his time from work. So let's keep that in mind. We still have a lot to do to convince the legislature to do the right thing.
And we give out Narcan, as much Narcan as they need and as much as they want. And we don't give out fentanyl test strips. Don't do that. We don't do that.
I do. If anybody needs them, I do. And it's important getting the fentanyl test strips. Also, when there's a cluster, I have on my Facebook page, I sent out a fentanyl cluster alert. Nobody's doing that. So if there's a cluster of deaths, we need to post on social media. Any one of you can post on social media. Say, I think there's a fentanyl cluster.
Yeah, the hard part in posting a fentanyl cluster with a lot of our participants is the fact that it's the mentality of living with a disorder, right? He dropped dead. That was good. And everybody runs and gets the dope from that dealer.
Wow.
Because that was good, right? And I'm not going to drop dead because I'm stronger than they are. So, we ask each other, we ask the participants about, how is everybody doing? Is the dope that's out there right now stronger? Is the fentanyl coming in stronger? And they let us know, and then we warn people, look, there's a high impact fentanyl out there. There's a lot of people ODing, be careful, here's extra Narcan. If they ask us where it's from, we don't ask that question because we don't want anybody to go and look for it.
Right. There's a lot of elements and layers that you wouldn't obviously think about in terms of connecting with the community, but it's amazing to see you guys have a great pulse on what is going on, and you're right there with them. That's amazing. Now, Macey, I have a question for you. What's something that has helped your process of recovery and becoming clean?
So what's helped me in my process for recovery is I've never relapsed. I know it's a huge percentage of people, but for me, after 20 years of Xanax and then several years of opiate addiction, it was the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. I walked into those rooms in South Philly for the first time, August 4th, 2017, and I found a reason never to use drugs or alcohol ever again. And I continue to be a sponsor. I have 2 sponsees at the Village right now. It's a treatment center for women who are expecting babies, who are going through the DCF process of getting their kids back. I'm on the committee for SFRICNA, or South Florida Regional Convention for Narcotics Anonymous. So I'm the secretary on that committee. I help on the H&I committee, which is hospitals and institutions. So every other week I'm at Bark Detox. So I get to meet with addicts and bring the message of recovery to them. And for me, it's also working the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. So I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I continually work on myself. One of my new assignments is actually taking all of my character defects, putting them on a poker chip, the one character defect on one side, like greed, and then the other side, generosity. And each morning I go in the fishbowl and pick one, and that's the principle that I practice that day. So I think everyone should have a 12-step program because I'm constantly working on myself. We're definitely not perfect, and for me, that's what keeps me clean and helps me in my recovery. And also, I volunteer part-time on the weekends with the Task Force for Ending Homelessness. And I know that there's people out there that specifically are looking for fentanyl. They're not heroin users, they are fentanyl users. And I met someone the other day who's a veteran who did not have access to his veteran services. He's homeless, he's been using fentanyl for several years. Was able to get him into Bark Detox only for an assessment. So before that, he had to go to respite, which is a kind of a go-between for people that are homeless, uninsured, and are waiting for their beds either at Bark Detox or IRT. And so he actually went there, and his withdrawals were so bad that he had to go to a hospital. So it's really scary out there. A 21-year-old from the village, I just saw her. She was leaving. She got her baby taken away. And her boyfriend picked her up, 21 years old, and then they called me the next day and said she had overdosed because you pick up where you left off. So where you left off using is where you pick up again. You don't try to use less, you use the exact same amount you were using at, and that's what killed her. But anyways, yes, so that's what keeps me clean in my recovery, just being completely immersed with Narcotics Anonymous and other people in recovery and having a really huge support system of other recovering addicts.
Thank you for that. Yes. Yeah, please. Yeah. Feel free to add it at any point. Yeah.
Sorry, I like to talk a lot. What she was saying, the gentleman was, there's people specifically looking for fentanyl. The fact is that there's no heroin on the street. The heroin kind of dissipated over about 5 years ago, right? 5-6 years ago, and it became this massive influx of fentanyl. When someone injects heroin, right, it takes about 5 to 6 hours. You got and then you might start feeling withdrawal. With fentanyl, you start feeling withdrawal 2 to 3 hours later, so you inject more, you use more. The folks, once they started introducing fentanyl into the streets, into the community, when the person initially injected the fentanyl, they got that high that they had in the beginning that they didn't feel for quite some time. And it made it easier to get that high over and over and over again. But that high getting over and over and over again, sad enough, is killing people by the thousands. I mean, last year we got to over 100,000 deaths, which is it's heartbreaking, but it's like she says, they're specifically looking for fentanyl. And if a dealer gets heroin by any chance, they'll tell them, I don't want that, I want the fentanyl.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't know if I can pull this far.
Here we go.
I don't want to hurt it. Yeah. So I love how this comes full circle, right? Because if you hear someone say someone has an overdose and those people may seek that out, I know that firsthand. I was that person. That was the thought. My first thought was wrong. My first thought was, oh, that person died. I want that stuff. It's really strong. And that goes to show that this is a disease that centers in your brain, that sells you a lie. In my own voice, it tells me that this is a good idea and I continue to do it, right? And you're absolutely right. And educating people and about fentanyl itself, people are dropping like flies in our community and they don't care because the voice inside their head tells them that it's okay. And then you feel like you're invincible, right? You think, oh, I'm stronger than that person. I can do that as well. And I just thought it was really important to say that the disease is the reason why these people are seeking out things that you have to go into this knowing that if I use this one time, I'm okay with dying today, right? It's a 50-50 shot. You don't know what's in it. But you're going to risk that because your brain is telling you you have to. And that's scary.
I think there's a common theme here which is really important. When we look at people relapsing, we tend to find that there's a pattern, and usually boredom and loneliness becomes a real significant factor in people going back to drugs. And hearing the stories and talking like your service work, Macey, that you're doing, and for each, there's something about being in this field. It's hard. It's very hard. It's hard to spend time and energy to try to improve somebody's life, and they don't believe enough in themselves. And we've all known lost folks, and but it speaks to something, when you see that it works, and that when people are connected, and I think this is a big part in the community. This isn't just about going to see a doctor, and I won't take away from the work that I do, but it really doesn't do it. And maybe you see a therapist for a few weeks, or you go and read a book or whatever. It's really about connecting with people. It's about having a full life. I always use with my patients, I always tell them, if your life was on eBay, would anybody bid on it? And if they wouldn't, then you probably have a bad mix. And so one of the real important parts of this is the idea of connecting, not just with resources for practical needs, but really that emotional, connectional, that support is so important in this process. And that's why, again, when we hear about it, we don't need to shy away. We don't need to be afraid. We need to be able to engage, be compassionate, be caring, thoughtful, and be real careful that you never know when you say a comment and somebody else picks up on that. I worked in HIV care for 20-some years, and how quickly someone will say, oh, I think they've got HIV, to someone who actually has HIV. Or a transgendered person, and they go, oh, you know what, something's wrong with her, and you don't think about it. And the same thing with drugs and alcohol, and they'll throw this stuff around, or they'll talk about, and you just don't understand it. But when you do connect with good people, and you do connect with a good support system, that can make all the difference in the world in someone's recovery.
That's a great point, especially because you think it's a huge issue and there's so many complex layers to it, and then at the root of it, it's all about support and community and outreach, and what we're doing tonight, which is, I think it's really reflective. And Macey, I had another follow-up question for you. I'm curious personally. You talk about the day that you remember, the exact date where you gave in and accepted that, and what was the thought that you had that really made you change your mind, or what was that one thing?
Well, it's a little embarrassing, but I was one of those addicts that actually used with one of their parents, and he was actually my supplier for several years until he wasn't anymore and cut me off. So I found myself on the streets picking up from someone in Kensington, which, if anyone knows, in Philly, that's like the land of the Walking Dead. You go in, you don't come back out, really. And so the person that I was getting it from stopped returning my calls, and I went through some horrible withdrawal symptoms. It was really, really bad, the worst I've ever felt in my life, because I'd never really gone through withdrawals because I already had a steady supply of drugs. And I finally made the decision that I just didn't want to be a slave to any chemical in my mind anymore. I just didn't want to. And also, I was self-medicating for an untreated mental health condition, which many of us are. I have a lot of childhood trauma. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual exploitation. I was homeless at 15, so there were a lot of things that have traumatized me in my life as a child, and what led to more of a more serious drug addiction. Not that it wasn't before, but so that's what happened. I couldn't do it anymore. I could have gone out to find it, and I just was like, I'm done. And my cousin picked me up and took me to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and I heard the message of recovery. And I know it sounds really corny, but that's exactly what worked for me. And I went on an antidepressant. I asked if it was normal to wake up and cry every day. Apparently it's not. So I got put on an antidepressant, started going to meetings and therapy once a week. And that's what's really, of course, and also the fellowship is what's really helped for me. Knowing that there's other people that are going through the same things that I'm going through, whether it was crack, heroin, alcohol. Like, we're all, I know I do use the term addict because that's what we use in Narcotics Anonymous. And, there's a whole area of all of us. And you can go to any NA meeting all over the world and you find people that are exactly like you. They say that when you were always the black sheep of your family, but you went to NA, you find the rest of the flock. And it is really true. So anyways.
I just want to say, let's give a round of applause for that. I mean, that's wonderful. We're so happy to encourage you for speaking about this. It's so personal. And also just you being here is a representation of how it can go right. This can end up in a good place because you're an example of that, which is amazing. I'd like to open the floor to all of us. And just your best answer to what can we all do to help locally at our level?
I'll just say, like, be supportive for people in recovery. You know, when I first got clean, my sister said, "You're not one of those people," because I told her I was going to go to an NA meeting. And I said, "Yeah, I am." Why? Because I put on a business suit and went and picked up. It's the same thing. I still had to wake up, take a pill before I even took a breath. And that's an addiction. So just be there for, you know, people in recovery, and, you know, we're all people, so.
So what can we do? I think we can all do more than we realize. Every single one of us can post on social media. And now I reach out to those of us who are quote-unquote normies, which means nothing. It just means we haven't been touched by the disease of substance use disorder. We have a moral obligation to speak out and tell our fellow quote-unquote normal people who haven't been touched, hey, we need to have compassion, empathy. Post on social media. If you choose to accept the Narcan tonight, post about Narcan. Post about having compassion for folks battling alcohol, drugs, substance use disorder. Number 2, carry Narcan with you everywhere. And more importantly, please download one app. Even if you don't do apps, I don't do apps. This is one of the few I have. Pulse Point. You'll find it in the App Store. Pulse Point. It will tell you in real time when there's an overdose right around you. It has allowed me to administer Narcan probably 4 or 5 times in the last 4 or 5 years. So Pulse Point, please download it.
You know, a lot of times people really ask and say, how can I make a difference? And really one of the most important things that we need to do today, and we've kind of talked about it, you know, our police and firefighters are on the front lines and helping and supporting people. But the issue is that we criminalize drug use, and rather than seeing it something that needs treatment. And really the idea of the voting and letting your elected officials know. Broward County is really a very interesting place. We've created some wonderful programs. Our drug court program here inspired the rest of the country to help to get people out of being incarcerated and getting them into treatment. And it is, if you ever hear any of the stories about it, it just will melt your heart. And the idea that we as a state do not invest in health and human service funding in Florida is a real crime, because access to services is most important. There are a lot of people who want to get better, but they simply can't afford it, and that shouldn't be a limiter for them to do that. So voting, letting your elected officials know, and then remembering to keep this as part of the debate. You know, this is really, it's never about you and what you're not concerned with it until it is about you. And I've had too many family members, I've had physicians, I don't have any drug addicts, I don't have anybody that's got a problem, I don't have anybody, you know, and it's, as soon as it does become, all of a sudden you realize, wow, you know, I'm not contributing to the good that's out there, maybe I was just living in denial. It's all around us, people in recovery are around us, people who have overcome addiction, they've overcome mental health issues, they're all around us. They may not be the loudest, but only when we join our voice together does it really make an impact in our community. So please vote and let your elected officials know.
Did you want to say something?
I always have something to say.
Of course. That's why you're here. That's why you're here.
I'm in the meetings and I'm like, I got so much to say. What can you do? You're doing it. The fact that every single one of you took the time to sit here and listen to us ramble on for an hour, you're doing it. So I say thank you to you, right? Thank you for being here. You're doing it. You're trying to learn, and you're trying to seek something, you know, in order to help someone else, right? The one thing I did want to touch on, I'm sorry, I like to talk, is the fact that we need to remember that it can happen to anybody. when I do presentations like to police departments, I want to try to do some here in Broward, but fire departments, things, I usually take my ID from when I started at the University of Miami, and I was in full withdrawal because I had just come out of the hospital with kidney stones, and I spent 6 days on a every 20-minute drip. And that's my best weapon when I see the face at the back of the room snark at me. Yeah, they choose it. And I take off my ID, or I take it out of my pocket now because I don't work there anymore. And I pass it along, and I say, I want you all to see what it looks like. It can happen to anybody because it happened to me. I went to the hospital. I was in there for 6 days. They had me on a morphine drip every 20 minutes. I was happy. When I came out, I started going through withdrawal. They gave me my 90 days supply of OxyContin. It was fabulous, right? And when I got home and I realized, because the first thing I did was go to the counter and crush a pill. You know, it took me back to when I was 17 and I was addicted to something else. And I said, oh. Right? And besides being in the field, right? Not everybody's in the field. Not everybody sits here and says, oh, this can happen, right? Anybody can become dependent. Absolutely anyone. They could fall down a stair. They could break a foot. I mean, I just had a plate taken out of my ankle. And the doctor went to give me my 90-day supply. And I said, I don't want it. And they said, well, you got to take it. I took it, and I had my wife take him and, throw it away. Pour water in the bottle and just throw away the bottle. Because I didn't want to go back there. I learned to just, take ibuprofen, and sleep a lot, sleep through the pain, right? But just be fully aware that anyone next to you that ends up in a hospital because of an accident, because of anything that happens in this vast world of ours, right? They could end up in that situation. And the one thing I ask is just be compassionate, be tolerant, understand, and maybe help them understand what they're going through. Because it's a very fast process to go from taking one pill every 4 hours to taking, 10 pills in every hour, right? Every 2 hours, to going out to the streets, to buying the pills that cost you $35, because it depends on a milligram of the pill is what they charge you. If you can even get the real pill on the street, because for the most part it's pressed fentanyl right now, right? And a bag of fentanyl or a bag of dope is $5. It's the math is there, right? It doesn't add up. So they end up using the fentanyl, snorting it to eventually, shooting it up, or just going straight to shooting it up. But just know that it's a hop, skip, and a jump. You open your eyes, you close your eyes, and you're there, right?
I really appreciate that you said that. When I say that the community can help by educating themselves, I don't only mean in a book. You can listen to recovering addicts on podcasts. You can listen to people's life experiences, and it will teach you everything you need to know and how to be compassionate. There's generational conditioning that you see someone on the side of the road and they're asking for money. If I told you that was me 5 years ago, would you believe me? Or if I put my mugshot, one of 10, behind me, would you believe me? No, I'm a businesswoman. I'm a mother. I'm an upstanding citizen, but you wouldn't know that person. And if you listen to people's lived experiences, which all started with a prescription drug that was legal, right? And then it spirals out of control. So not everybody who is a drug addict has someone who has substance use disorder. People refer to them as junkies or whatever you want to call us, me. We're just really good people, some of us, all of us. And the compassion shown by others helps us recover.
That's excellent. I also want to close us out with something that you mentioned. I was going to say, we're artists. We love the arts. We love what it does for the community and for communication. And I'd love some recommendations if you have any on any podcasts, books, movies, any material media that you think has the opportunity to transform.
So I'm a huge fan of Soft White Underbelly, if anyone's heard of him. Mark Glacia, he's amazing, and he does all of the interviews on Skid Row about people who are, how they ended up in Skid Row, the addicts, also the people that are, I would say, trafficked on Figueroa Boulevard, and also I like to download the Narcotics Anonymous convention tapes, because, you know. And also, one of the sayings I will just say in Narcotics Anonymous is 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And that is so true for all of us. Like, I could never just have one of anything, and that means anything. Like, one potato chip? No, I have to have like 500 chips. Like, it's everything.
I'll put in, a big part of education is getting it from reliable sources. And so the two things that are, first off, if you have any concerns about someone in your life, Al-Anon is a super resource to really understand and get support if you believe someone in your life is using or abusing substances. The National Institutes for Health has what's called the National Institute for Drug Abuse, has great information on that to understand what's going on. It's easy to read. Also, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has excellent resources and guides, especially working with teens, young people, how to talk about addiction, how to talk about mental health issues. And so they're all free resources and they're really helpful. So National Institutes of Health and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, we call it SAMHSA.
When talking about resources, I would like to add one thing that we really haven't touched upon. Is there's many pathways to recovery. For most people, yes, the fellowship of the rooms is what works, but also medication-assisted treatment is a crucial element that occasionally invites controversy, that often legislatures are against. The idea of getting a person off one substance and possibly getting them onto another is the pathway to recovery for many people. Also, faith-based recovery. There are faith-based 12-step programs. Very few people make it on their own through abstinence. There are people who have, but again, generally speaking, somebody needs a support system. So just keep in mind, as the doctor said, resources, check them out. But besides Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, there are medication-assisted treatment, medication-assisted recovery options. The second point I want to make I'm sure there are people in here in this room like myself who've never gratefully been touched by this disease, but I do realize but for the grace of God go I. For us, we need to realize too that there are innocent victims here, hidden victims of the whole opioid pandemic. It's the human beings who are battling, absolutely. It's the human beings who've died, the human beings in long-term recovery, but it's the family members. From my giveaways, doing almost 400 of these events across the country, I've seen how devastating it is to family members or support systems. Spouses, lovers, children, people trying to help somebody in recovery. And also the other hidden victims are those people, those Americans, maybe somebody in here, who are truly in chronic pain and have a true, genuine need for opioids. Opioids themselves are not bad. It is the overprescribing of opioids like candy that is bad. There's definitely a medical need. And even fentanyl, I just want to clarify one thing. We talked a lot about it, and that's unusual that there are a bunch of people who say they would seek it out. My experience going to a bunch of places is most people don't say, I don't care if I live or die. They're using to avoid withdrawals. They're using out of anguish. They're not using it to say, I don't care if I live or die. And it's important that you realize fentanyl does have a legitimate medical use. We in Fire Rescue give fentanyl. We'll give it to you IV drip or through micrograms, not the milligrams that are coming over in the illicit tainted fentanyl. So just understand what we have is a pandemic now of illicit fentanyl tainting any street substance. Thank you.
Everything he said, but I need to, this is my PSA. Right now, all the drugs that anyone is buying on the streets, whether it be pot, cocaine, crack, methamphetamines, Percocets that are actually fentanyl, Xanax, heroin, any drugs that you buy on the streets at this point in time, be fully aware of the fact that it's probably 98% that they will have fentanyl in it. Okay, they're cutting everything, they're lacing everything with fentanyl. The pot, they take it and spray the buds with fentanyl. I know personally 2 guys that OD'd smoking a blunt together. And they were lucky enough that they were next to some people that injected that bought them back and Narcan them back, right? And they came in and asked me, can I get some fentanyl? Yeah, I mean, some Narcan, and we gave them Narcan. But just be fully aware, it's in everything. Just be careful, okay? The next thing I was gonna say, and I forgot what I was gonna say, but what was your question again? Books, movies, the Harm Reduction Coalition. Okay, they are the national guide, right, for syringe exchange programs and any harm reduction program that there is in this country and internationally. They're the biggest coalition that there is when it comes to drug use and harm reduction. And then one last word, and I'm gonna say it proudly, gay. Gay.
I want to say personally, and from all of us, thank you so much for not only being here, but being incredible representatives of the community and just being so educated and giving us so much to think about. I just want to give a big round of applause for you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. Truly wonderful. And so we're actually going to do our little community spotlight right now. So Luis, you're going to go ahead and give us the demonstration, yeah?
Quick 4 or 5 minute break.
Let's take a little break so you can get some drinks, enjoy, and we'll be back in 5. Thank you so much, guys.
I'm very sorry about your grandchild. My son's father died from an overdose less than 2 years ago, and I completely understand. I want to say that a common misconception is that alcohol is not a drug. Alcohol is a drug. I believe that enabling an alcoholic and or an addict or someone with substance use disorder across the board is the same. However, it's different for each individual. I will tell you that enabling caused me to stay in active addiction a lot longer than I had to. Sometimes the hardest thing you have to do is the best thing you can do for the person suffering. I repeatedly, my family would give me money and they would try to help me. And the truth is when they applied tough love and when they stopped making things so, I was being resourceful, but if they made things a little easier, and when they stopped making it easier, I started having to figure it out on my own. And we can't love the person suffering into recovery. We can love them as much as possible, but the only person that can get them to get clean or sober and stay that way is themselves.
Yeah, and I would just add, you don't want to love the person to death, because that's what I see a lot also. There's a difference between compassion and enabling, and, when I had a parent that was getting me the drugs for me, I would definitely say that was enabling. And when I finished my step 9, which is making amends, I did ask my parent, what they thought they were doing for me when they were giving me the drugs, and he said he thought he was helping me. So, yes, it helped me spiral into, a serious opiate addiction. But, I think, and then the tough love part, like my mom threw me out at 15 for drugs, but like I was a child. So, I don't know, there's like a fine line, but yeah, they have to want it themselves. That's it.
We're usually working with families. The idea is if you're uncomfortable doing something for someone else, and this, of course, is outside of even addictions, then you have to hold to your moral standard of what you think you should do. The difficulty is when you blur the line and you work harder than the person who has the problem for them to get better. And so the idea of creating a boundary is that if it's an adult person, then they, as an adult person, they can make choices and they have a life. If you're having to come in and rescue them, regardless of what it might be, a lot of people now it's financial stuff. A lot of people, I'm charging them the card, we'll help you out. So it doesn't always have to be addiction, but you're stepping beyond a point where you start to feel uncomfortable, then that's a time when you need to then step back and then usually reach out to your healthy resources, your clergy person, your healthy family member, your spouse if you can, whatever, and then process what that looks like. Because you shouldn't be doing anything that makes you feel so uncomfortable that it doesn't feel right. you don't, remember, it's not all or nothing. So the idea with it is healthy boundaries. And so that's what you're always going to try to teach. So your family is genetically loaded for addiction. That just, you have explained it very well. And so that's an important concept because you want to be alert to it. But at the same time, the idea is that, I don't talk to all my friends about what I do in the bedroom, but I can still have them as friends. And the issue with family, is whether it's politics or religion or whatever it may be, is that you take the lead in your life and that you have people who are supportive and have healthy boundaries with you and you have healthy boundaries with them. One of the most difficult things is for people to be able to set healthy boundaries in families which really are dysfunctional, and then they feel guilty for trying to do something healthy for themselves. And so the idea is it's not all or nothing. It's the idea is that you do what's best and most comfortable for you. If you need to, talk it out with someone who you trust and care about. But you can set that boundary. And so if dad starts drinking, we leave the house. We're not coming over if you're drinking. Or if you start blowing up, then we're leaving. And so that idea of, remember, emotionally and physically safe for yourself.
Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could define harm reduction and some of the different things that are harm reduction, because I feel like that is a little bit of a confusing and stigmatizing topic. So what is it, and then what the syringe exchange and some other things that act as harm reduction as well?
Harm reduction is to reduce harm to the person, doing everything you can to make sure that that person doesn't cause harm, right? Condoms are harm reduction, right? Needles, syringe exchanges are harm reduction. The seatbelt is a harm reduction. So harm reduction is just simply doing or providing everything that's possible for the people that you serve to cause minimal harm to themselves.
I'll take it a step further. As a healthcare professional, harm reduction is preventing mortality and morbidity that was preventable apart from the substance use disorder. So that's a key. We're trying to prevent death.
Yeah.
So to go off of that, I was talking to Lewis about this, but I just recently, I don't know if anybody else watched his last week with John Oliver, but his episode yesterday focused specifically on fentanyl and harm reduction centers, specifically centers that actually supervise the use of the substances.
Yeah, safe injection sites.
And they've had, from what he said, obviously, I'm going off John Oliver, but he said that there's never been a death in any of these centers.
That's correct. That's based on the Canadian experience.
So could you I just wanted to know more about those specific types of centers.
Okay.
I feel like we haven't touched on it.
Absolutely. So briefly, yeah, the first safe injection site officially is open in New York City. There was a battle about 2 years ago to open one in Philadelphia, and that would have happened had the neighbors not intervened and forced the plaza owner to say no. The conflict primarily relies right now, going back to what the doctor mentioned about politics, and again, I encourage us to seek any opportunity to get involved with harm reduction, but also with political activity that will help folks battling substance use disorder. The challenge is right now at the federal level, anything at all pertaining to legitimizing or okaying marijuana use even is considered federally illegal at that federal level, other than MAT-MAR. So the problem, it's a murky line because the federal government's against them. Many states and counties now are realizing safe injections are a good way to go. I hope we see many more open in the next few years. That's one option. Fentanyl test strips. They're illegal technically, and I get it. You guys, if you're grant funded, if it's a requirement, you can't do anything illegal. I'm not. I carry fentanyl test strips. I've been pulled over by the cops now where they run me and they Google me and they're like, oh yeah, you're doing that. I'm like, yep, you can arrest me and it'll be all over the news, or you can let me go. And you can buy them from safedance.org, $20. That's where I get them from. 20 strips, $20 plus shipping, and hand them out. And I'm all pro the fentanyl cluster alert. I respect that some people said it might encourage people. What I found in most of my experiences traveling is when you alert people in a certain area, hey, right now in the last 24 hours, the city of Fort Lauderdale has had a dramatic increase. If you have fentanyl strips, use them. It does inspire many people to test their drug before using or get test strips. It does invite some people to go out and seek it, but many more people are also don't want to die. They're not using with the idea, I don't care if I live or die. Not everybody had that philosophy. So, as she mentioned, harm reduction includes condoms. It also includes anonymous, not confidential HIV and Hep C testing. There's a difference. I was involved in that too from the jail for like 20 years, HIV testing. So confidential is one thing where they record your information. Anonymous is much better, where people have absolutely no tracking. They get a number, they go in and get the results. We need to encourage anonymous HIV and Hep C testing. We need to do like you guys are doing. That's part of it. Thanks.
There used to be anonymous HIV testing in the state of Florida, and that stopped about, 10 years ago? Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, good.
No, the safe injection sites. So New York went around the law, words with a play on words, right? The state did not want to have a safe syringe exchange site. So what New York did was they created an overdose prevention site. So they opened up an overdose prevention site. The first one that was in North America was actually out of Vancouver, Canada, out of a place that was called C, right? C. And they've got safe injection sites all over Canada.
Yeah, I was about to talk about that. So I'm from Toronto, Canada. Go Raptors. And yes, I did visit the first safe injection site. I can't remember the name of it. It's in British Columbia in Vancouver and the downtown east side. And so you bring your drugs with you. You use your street name. And then they show you where to safely inject. Like if your veins are collapsed, they show you where to shoot up, like in your neck. It's all nurses. They have individual booths, so you can't. So there is privacy, and there's never been an overdose there because there's nurses there to bring you back if you do overdose.
There's never been a fatal overdose. There have been hundreds of overdoses. They've all been reversed.
Oh, okay. Well, same, whatever. But yeah, so I don't know. I went there and it was pretty amazing. And also, I just want to share about the harm reduction model that a lot of people don't realize is with. I used to work at the Salvation Army in Toronto and also here in Miami. And so, the Salvation Army is abstinence based, meaning if you're someone with an addiction, you are drug tested before you go into the shelter. So if you fail that test, you are not able to stay in that shelter. And Broward Partnership for the Homeless here in Broward County, they actually will let you in. You can't use drugs while you're in there, but you can use it before you come in and then go there. Hopefully you're not on the top bunk though, because that could be a little dangerous.
It's almost like a pregnancy test, right? Yeah.
They used to, remember in Vegas, they were doing at the parties, they had a company that would go out and they would test, people could bring their drugs and they would take a little sample and put it in there and they test it, but then the state came in and said that's completely illegal, people can't do that. So then all of a sudden all the overdoses go up. But you can do it for many different drugs.
So you just have to add a little water, whatever you're doing,
getting it on
tiny bit, so it's not like people have to waste what they're
Say, oh, we're different.
No.
I wouldn't waste that little bit.
$20 for 20 strips.
And then we know that at a needle exchange, those people who participate are 5 times more likely to get treatment
Yes.
because of those touch points. Now, is a safe injection site like the same theory? You're having touch points with those people?
Yeah, you're having constant touch points with them. I was going to say that they're 5 times more likely to go into rehab. The site from Vancouver, which was C, yeah, it's a first floor. It's a building, I think it's 3 or 4 stories. So if you go there, there's counselors always there waiting if you want to speak to them. And if you want rehabilitation, they'll take you to the 2nd floor for detox.
Oh, really? Right.
And then they have housing, rehabilitation center upstairs. So they have right on the premises. It's the whole kit and caboodle. They have everything.
So there's data, like it's been around for a
It's been around for 20 years, at least 20 years.
Have them too, and they always have wraparound services. So there's also health services, social services, food stamp, all those kind of things as well to help people. And there isn't the encouragement towards getting treatment, but the reality is that could be a long process for a lot of folks.
And just before we move on for any other questions, just to define a touch point, because I hadn't heard that term before. What is a touch point?
This is a touch point. It's interacting. It's the interacting. I've said, and I've apologized to people that do outreach, right? Because outreach is an instant contact, but we have more touch points because they come to us every week,
Right.
and we spend 20 minutes with them every week, and we talk to them about harm reduction. We talk to them about MAT, and we talk to them about rehab and getting treated for hepatitis. So it's a constant communication. It's
Like an
constant.
accountability sort of.
It's a relationship that gets built. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a relationship. Yeah.
for sure. That's amazing. I'm the psychology behind that multiple touch points.
You care about them, and so
Yeah.
they're willing to talk to you. And we look at the suicide rate, which is now ballooning, and we see that most patients who commit suicide have seen their primary care provider within less than 3 months before they committed suicide. And so the idea of saying, well, they touched base with somebody, but they didn't get the help they needed. And that's especially true. There's a real culture around substance use, and a lot of people they will have an entire world that there's no healthy person in their world. And so simply to have a place to go and to meet a nurse or talk to a social worker, it doesn't sound like it would be a lot, but it could be huge. That might be the only person that they know who's not using or using them.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you think that that's like a small thing, but it's a really big, essential part of the process. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions? Yeah. Oh yeah, you and then yourself. Yes.
I just wanted to share something.
Yes.
I have a friend who has been sober living for 49 years, and the words he used to alcohol is his addiction is that I am allergic to alcohol.
Allergic.
That takes, to me, for me, the onus off of, like, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Has a connotation also. I am allergic to alcohol. And
Yeah.
that's effective. So, 49 years. He goes to AA every day.
Wow.
I do that.
Yeah.
The literature of AA just explains alcoholism as an allergy, to break it down in layman's terms, for the alcoholic. And it allows us to identify and understand exactly that it's a reaction to something, right? We perpetuate craving. The phenomenon of craving occurs inside of me when I put alcohol inside my body, so that makes me an alcoholic. That means I cannot drink alcohol. So that's a great, great, great point.
Thank you for sharing that. And Jazz, you had a question?
Yeah, so I personally am not aware of having come into contact with someone who has been using fentanyl, so I'm not really sure what to look out for, before somebody overdoses or blacks out. I'm not really sure the symptoms to look out for.
Okay, I think you're asking about the signs and symptoms of a critical overdose. Okay, so people use, they have a normal process. They know how much they can use. They know what effect. They know how long it'll take. But when somebody starts off, first they become, clinically speaking, over-medicated. And then, if they've ingested fentanyl, they experience a very sudden critical event. Typically, it's a sudden collapse, a sudden cessation of breathing, a sudden loss of heartbeat. So it'll be pretty dramatic. They'll be driving a vehicle, and in the middle of traffic, they'll be passed out. You'll notice them outside Dunkin' Donuts, and if you're not aware, you might walk in and walk past a guy who's dangling over the rail. That happens. We need to open our eyes and look around us. But it's pretty dramatic. That's all you have to really be aware of. If it's a sudden collapse, an immediate, not they're getting high, not they're getting loopy, not they're getting groggy, not they're getting drowsy. It's a sudden collapse, typically, if they've had fentanyl, and it'll be very dramatic. It'll start off with a loss of consciousness instantly within 10 to 20 seconds, a loss of breathing and or heartbeat. It's pretty dramatic. And I'll let you ladies add anything you want to add.
And physically, what you're going to see is the pinhole eyes, right? They're not going to react to you like he said before. You're going to do chest rubs. Their lips might turn blue, right, because there's no oxygen. If they're a black person, their nails will turn blue. And it's because, wider, we have the pink lips and you could see the blue, but on a black person, you have darker lips, so you really can't see the blue come out, right? So you could look for their nails. The skin under their nails will turn blue. So that's one way to know that there's no oxygen whatsoever. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Yeah. Any final closing questions that we have? Yes.
You guys had mentioned substance abuse disorder instead of addiction. Are there other phrases and terms that we would use in everyday life like that are outdated, need to be changed, we need to be aware of?
Well, with the 2 fellowships, I will just say that we refer to ourselves as clean and in recovery, and with Alcoholics Anonymous, they use the term sober. So that's just, those are the 2 differences there with the 2 fellowships. And you will get called out in an NA meeting if you say sober. No, it's clean. So
I mean, we're in a very PC world, so it's easier to ask the person. Honestly, it's easier. When I've worked with the transgender, support groups, I ask them, what's the terminology you want me to use? What can I not use? Because I might blurt something out I said in the 80s, oh no, because, and they're like, oh no, right? So it's ask the person, ask whoever the group you're dealing with, is there anything here that we don't feel comfortable with? Is there a way you rather I address you?
And don't be afraid to talk to people. I mean, one of the things is that some people get very, they might have, get all weirded out or whatever. That's their problem. If you're being caring and thoughtful and you're having a conversation and the motive is pure and it's all good, sometimes these conversations around these topics are difficult. And so being uncomfortable is kind of the name of the game. But, if that's their issue and they're, in the world of addiction, there are names for everybody, I'm an alcoholic, you're a tweaker, and so people look down on you, and then they look down, and it's like this hierarchy, and like, oh no, I was real hardcore, and people, it's this crazy world, and everything's distorted. But the idea is kind of just a great thing, ask people what they want to, but at the same time, if you're just thoughtful enough and kind, and most people are going to cut you some slack,
What I think is really interesting in recovery, what I learned, and if I'm not mistaken, clinically, when you diagnose someone, so I would be, back in my past, severe opioid use disorder or severe opioid dependency. And now when I read it, it says opioid use disorder in remission, right? So it actually, clinically, they refer to it in medical terminology. So with any substance. It could be alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder. It could be any of those things, and it could be moderate, it could be severe, and it could be in remission.
Remission is more than 12 years. Partial remission is 6 months. And they're all done by mild, moderate, or severe. And then sometimes there could be other things like psychosis and some other different conditions that can come from substance use disorders.
And the reasoning with the disorder is, the reasoning that disorder is attached, like they've all said, is to take away from the stigma and to make people understand that it is not a choice. It is a mental disorder. It's either something you're born with or it's something that's triggered, right? But it becomes a physical illness. So adding disorder brings more acceptance and allows people to talk about it more.
Awesome. Any final questions for this excellent panel? No? All good? I gotta say, from behalf of all of us, thank you so much for being here and educating so succinctly, so wonderfully. Excellent panel. We couldn't have asked for a better panel tonight.
I would like you to give yourselves a round of applause. Having given up 2 hours of your time says a lot about you guys, and we're definitely on the right path. You're part of the solution. And I've got to give a big shout out to these ladies. The doctor and I are healthcare professionals. We're just part of the continuum, but you make the difference, really. addiction is a continuum of loneliness and disconnection. Somebody mentioned so superbly that you can't love somebody in recovery, but to recover, they do need love and support. And that, again, it's a fine line between enabling and compassion, but truly a support system is crucial if you know somebody battling substance use disorder. Thank you.